Welcome to Peeking Over the Fence, a podcast where we share real stories of healing and hope. We are your hosts, Missy and Karen, and we're so glad you're here. Hi, Karen.
Missy.
So we just want to welcome everybody to episode 4. Can you believe that we've already recorded 3 other episodes?
I can't believe it. I can't believe how well our podcast is doing. Thank you everyone so much
Yes.
for
Yes.
following along and listening.
And the
And
messages, we love to get the messages and get feedback from people about what you think and your opinions and your stories. And I think that's what I love the most is just hearing other people's stories as well. So speaking of stories, we have one for you tonight, which is a heavy one, and it's an important conversation. And I think especially in the Christian world, it's always been kind of one of those topics that, back in the day, people just didn't talk about, or they brushed under the rug, or they were embarrassed about, and it's divorce. And so I just, Karen and I prayed before we started this podcast because it is such a heavy, heavy topic for Karen. It has been a big part of her life. And I just want to thank you for being brave enough to share it. I think that takes a lot of guts to put that out in the world. I know it's taken you a long time to get to this point. You've been through a lot. Um, so, Karen, one of the things that I feel like is so important to start with, and it was a question that we had written down because I feel like your perspective is so important where you're coming from. So, before we get into all like the details, can you tell everybody why you felt called to talk about divorce from an accountability perspective? Because to me, you always hear when people talk about divorce, it's like, well, he did this, she did that. It's all their fault. It's all their fault. And you know, I think in any situation, we all play a role, right? We all play some sort of role. So, can you just like start with that, like why you felt you wanted to start with like, hey, this is my perspective.
yeah, so it wasn't always like this.
Right.
And for the first little bit, I was constantly felt like I had to give my version of the story to, any questions about it. Um, Yeah, and I had been seeing a counselor, and I remember him saying he talked about extreme accountability, and I was not ready to hear it at that
Mhm.
time.
Can you explain
Be,
what he meant by that? What
well,
does
he
extreme
like how you
accountability
just take responsibility for yourself, and it's the way to move on, right?
mean?
So I'm not taking responsibility for anything that isn't mine.
Right.
That is not what I'm saying. So, um,
And how hard was that to do?
it's hard. And I'm not saying that, um, I mean, pre-gaming, Missy and I, some of the things that we're going to talk about, I read her this letter that I'm not going to read to you all that was left on my car, and I got a little fired up about it.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I was like, okay, we're going back to extreme accountability.
Right. Well, and I think the one thing that happens right away when family and friends find out that you're getting divorced, what happened? Like,
Decide.
it's almost like whose fault was it? And then it's like, you feel like, I guess people feel like they need to take a side. And so I think a lot of times internally, the person that's going through the divorce has to get defensive off the bat, like immediately.
Yes, and there are things being said that aren't true.
Right.
And I think quickly I mean, it was heart-wrenching. I had to figure out whose opinions mattered and whose voices mattered.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was very hard
Right.
to
And
do
then
that.
being in a church with your spouse for so many years and your lives are
Almost 2 decades. Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
And then your lives and your community and the activities and everything that you do are so intertwined. So, what were some of the things that you did right off the bat, like immediately? Like, I know you said you would go to church late or get out
So
early.
I would try to slip in like after service started and then slip out before it ended, and then I would sit in the back just because I wanted to go to church.
Mhm.
I, I wanted to be close to God. I had worshiped in that sanctuary for so long,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to give that up. Um, but I also didn't want to be seen or talked to. Um, yeah, I felt, um, don't get me wrong. I mean, people were gracious and very kind. Um, but it was what was going on inside of me.
Right.
Well,
Well, and
most
then
people were gracious, not
most people,
everybody.
not everybody. I mean, I feel like, you know, you want to believe that everyone's supportive and will live out the Christian values, but then there are people who unfortunately use scripture and use the idea that they're better than someone else and then actually act on that. So, talk about what that was like because you had one particular instance where you found a letter on your car. And
Yeah, so
so, yeah, yeah, that still
the
fires me
letter.
up. And then, before, like Karen said, before we started this podcast, she read me the letter again, and it just makes me want to take my earrings off. It just
Right,
makes,
Vault of the Hood, Girl
it's
from the Hood.
like, wow, it almost makes you feel like who are you? Like, who do you think you are to insert yourself into else's life that way? So, tell us what it was like to walk or to find, I think your daughter found the letter, but what it was like to open that up and read it.
Yeah, so that particular service, I had gone in late, intending to sit in the back and leave early, like I had done in previous weeks.
Mhm.
So we're sitting there, and there was obviously a medical emergency going on over to the side. And then the pastor's up front and he's said, are there any doctors or nurses? If so, come see me. And I'm like this because like, oh, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And then somebody who named me is like, "Ken," you know.
Right.
So I walk up and go find out what's going on. They had plenty of people helping. They didn't need me. So then that happened. And but like during while all that was going on, I was observing like how the church came together and they were praying over this medical emergency and the worship team was playing and it was like this holy moment and it was just so full of the spirit. So I slip out, I go get in my car and I drive home and I think about so someone had put a note on my car and I think about how they had to watch me go in because I went in late,
Mhm.
put the note on my car, and then if they watched me leave, they watched me under my windshield. So my
And you know
daughter,
what a blessing that was though, because they didn't get to see your reaction. I love that.
so so at that time, my daughter, we were sharing my car, and I got to where we were staying, and she went out and well, she was driving down the road, and she said it started flapping, and she had to pull over and get it. So it was in an envelope. So when she gets back, she's like, "Mom, one of your church ladies must have left this note on your car." And then I open it, and it is not, first of all, is not something that you want your kid to read. And
Right.
secondly, it was scathing. And I
Mm,
remember one of my friends said it was almost as if it was written by Satan himself.
right.
I mean, it was all lies. It
Wow.
was every derogatory thing that you could say about a woman was said about me.
Mm, wow.
And
And
yeah,
what did
so
that do to you at that moment? Like what did that feel like?
well, I think that was the first time that I realized what it was kind of like my biggest fear was answered,
Mm, right.
right? That the people that I had served beside who I worshiped with and loved God with
Mhm.
were going to see me differently.
Right.
And it was kind of it was affirmation that that was was happening. And while it wasn't, I mean, it was one person, although the letter did say it was like we this, we that. I don't know if it was
Hmm.
a couple or a group or whatever,
Right.
but yeah, it was painful and I was shook. But I will tell you that when I would tell people, they were just like everybody was in shock about
Hmm.
this letter. And then I told one of my friends, and she looked at me for really serious, and then she busted up laughing. And she was like, "That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever." She's known me for years and years and years.
Right.
Like that is the biggest joke ever. And then after that, I started something broke free in me the way she laughed about it. Like,
Right.
and like, who would believe that? Like, no one.
Right.
And then I had to decide, like, there were going to be folks that were going to believe things that weren't true. And that, I mean, I don't know if you remember, we were at the writers' conference and something on my social media was shared that
Yeah.
was totally blown out of proportion.
Hmm.
And I tried to explain to that person, like, you cannot share my social media with
Right.
my former spouse. And they did not understand. And I had to
Right.
block them, and it broke my heart. It broke
Right.
my heart. And we're not reconnected. And I
Mm,
don't know that we will be. And I mean, I think that's the most painful part of divorce is you're not losing just your spouse, or that you're
right.
losing these wonderful people that were connected in that way.
Right.
And I mean, I still feel it. I still feel it. Um,
Well, I think when your worst fears come true, it's like, okay, I survived it. It was awful. I survived it.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and it's so ironic to me how people, like I said, can insert themselves in a situation that they know nothing about, that they may have heard one side of the story and then just assume all these things and then act on it. That's the biggest thing is like think what you want in your head, but to act on that and to actually purposely set out to hurt somebody. That is wild. That's just wild to me.
Like that is not my nature. That is
Mhm.
so far. Like I'm never aware of that. Like, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and I feel like also at the same time, and now did you continue like continually stay at that church or did you back off a little bit? Like
no,
how
I backed off, and then another one of my friends, and I moved to Fredericksburg at some point, and I
right.
was living in another friend's basement apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of like church searching. So we did
Mm-hmm.
that for a while. And then Ella and I ended up at a church. One of my friends invited me to a church that we stayed at for a bit, um, where I was really able to break free. It was one of those great big churches with tons and tons of people, and
Mm-hmm.
I could kind of like slip in and slip out without being noticed, and I would sit in the very, very back corner in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one Sunday the pastor, he uh it was like my first Sunday there, and he started talking about divorce, and he was like, this could have happened and that could have happened and this could have been said and that could have been said, and it was almost like word for word of what was happening. And I was
Wow.
like, does he do this every week?
What's
Like what?
going on? Does he know me?
Yeah, yeah. And it just and and it was just this reminder of like God hasn't God, like, let's face it, we all, in things like divorce, none of us can come out like shining stars, right? I mean,
Right.
I my worst moments and things were then, and
Right.
um, but um,
And that's
the
where that
real,
accountability comes in. It's like you take accountability for the things that you've done,
yeah,
but in the same sense, you do not take on full responsibility of it all.
yeah, no,
Right.
which is, and that's something that I had to learn. I heard something about it's called cheap forgiveness, right? And like we are commanded to forgive. But
Right.
when you're consistently saying I forgive you, and there's no change, my thing was like, let's just start over. Let's just start over.
Right.
Let's just start over. And there was no real change ever. That's cheap forgiveness. And what good did it do? It didn't
Right.
do any good. And I was at fault for that.
Right.
I was at
Right.
fault for that because I didn't um, really demand change or expect change. I just kept doing the same thing over and over.
Right. Right. And I mean, so you basically, it was like grieving in public. It was like a spotlight on you. How are you handling this? And, what is she doing? And I can't believe she's doing this or that. And it's like you have all these eyes on you while you're going through one of the worst things in your life. I
Well,
mean,
and the letter was, I mean, when I read it to you, it was accusing me of stepping out on our marriage.
right.
And in one way, I was like, have they seen me? Like, I can barely get one foot in front of the other.
Right.
And it was taking everything I could to function and
Mm,
hold myself together for my daughter. And it was just, I didn't know how, I was just starting in nutrition response testing. My business was not, I was not making enough money to support myself.
right.
I mean, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of, and I'm thinking, and somebody thinks I have the bandwidth to have an affair. And my daughter's with me 24/7. Like,
Right.
and at first I was like, well, I must look better than I think I do.
Right.
Um,
Apparently, they think I'm doing better than I really am. That's hilarious.
yeah, but yeah, it and it
So,
was hard because it was, there wasn't, I had like people that I would talk to. At first I chose people to talk to that I knew loved him because
mm,
I knew they wouldn't turn on him,
right.
but it became difficult, right? Like they um it's a very, and then it's a very lonely process. It really
Right.
is. Hmm.
So during that time, what was that like? What helped you the most get through? Like, what were the things that you, on the days where, especially on the day you got that letter, what were the things that helped you keep pushing forward?
Well, the liquor, I think, actually helped me realize like this is over. This
Mm,
is over. Like
right.
any little bit of trust, any little bit of hope, any little ounce of maybe this can be salvaged, that killed it.
Mm,
So I think it
right.
was, you know, these years later, I mean, when I read it, we laughed. Like we laughed so
Right.
hard because it's
Right.
harsh, this harsh
Right.
letter.
Right.
Um, um, so I will say my work, like
Mm,
on my, I can remember like it was so dark and we were living in this basement apartment and I would just lay in bed frozen and I would listen to the all night long. I would play the goodness of God on repeat, like
mm.
no joke. And I swear there were some nights where I could just feel Jesus standing beside my bed. Like,
Oh, I love that.
and I mean, it was like it was incredibly lonely.
Mm,
And it's like you have support, but you can't go on and on about that. It's just you have to. But my work, like I was developing my nutrition response testing practice. And when I would go to work, that's where my life was. And if
right.
I wouldn't have had my work at the time, I don't know what I would.
Right.
It gave me something to look forward to. It made me,
Mm. A purpose. Yeah. No, and it's so it's important to share that because I feel like, you know, what people go through, it's a lonely thing to go through because you feel like, number one, I cannot believe this is happening. I just cannot. And we've talked about that so many times. Like, I just can't believe this is happening. And I think that's why people try to make it work, and keep doing the things. And you said you kept
Well, that's what
forgiving.
I kept doing for years and years and years, and
Right,
then finally I just broke. I just
right,
broke and I couldn't do it one more time. Just
right.
couldn't do it. And and I'm not gonna say that was the holy thing to do. I don't know, but I just couldn't. And
Well,
I'm
and I
not gonna,
think, go ahead.
yeah, I'm not, you know, divorce is divorce and um I'm not gonna like defend like the sin or whatever. I do recommend if you're going through this, Lisa Turkis, she has a podcast with it's called Therapy and Theologist, and it's with her counselor and a theologian, and it really helped set my heart free.
Right,
Um, and take accountability where I needed to take accountability, and then to release things that I just needed to release.
right.
Um,
And I think what we have said several times is we're not going to preach. We're not going to, do a whole, teaching or anything like that. But just a little bit that I've researched about how God feels about divorce. First of all, there's so many scholars, like Bible scholars and people that are way smarter than I am and know way more about the Bible. They like the language that's used in the Bible, the original translations are confusing. And but what they most of them have come to conclude is that God hates divorce. He doesn't hate the people, right? He doesn't
well,
hate
he hates
those
the things
people.
that lead to the divorce. He hates
Absolutely.
that. He hates the whatever that is.
Right.
Um,
And
and
I
then
think
there, I
people
mean,
take
there's
that out of context and then do the things like the people that wrote that letter to you and trying to condemn you and say, well, God said he hates this. And It's like,
Well, they were flat on accusing me of things that were true. I mean,
right, like flat out accusing you of untrue things. And it's like, wait a second, let's like in general, when someone's going through a hard time, they're human beings. They're not, robots. They're human beings that are hurting. And why would you want to add to that? Like, why would you want to purposely go out to hurt somebody? And I think that's important. It's like, you know, whether that hard time lasts for a week or lasts for years, like that person needs support. So let's be, the hands and feet of Jesus.
and if you know what, you can have your opinions or have whatever,
Mm,
but back off.
back
I mean,
off.
the last thing, trust me, I've gotten, in things on my inbox and, on Facebook from about divorce this, divorce that. And
Right.
it's like, I mean, I said to one man, you're not saying anything to me that I haven't said to myself.
Mm,
And I've
right.
had to reconcile this with God.
Right.
And that was the last time, um, I
Right.
mean, going through this as somebody who was so, I mean, it's not that I was just involved in church. I mean, I was serving with my whole heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the African ministry, the women's ministry in my house,
Right.
all of that is intertwined in this marriage,
Right.
right? And seeing how it shifts and letting it go, and it's, I will say I had way more support than I had these
Right.
other things coming at me.
Right.
And, focusing on the women in my women's group that reached out, or my friends that were, let's go out to eat, let's do this, let's
Mm-hmm.
do that. The new friendships that developed,
Right.
figuring out myself. And then when I started dating again and figuring out, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who I was and what was okay and what wasn't okay and what, all, it just, I mean, here I am and I'm fine. Like, I'm fine, people.
Right. But it's a journey. Like it's
It
a
is a journey.
journey.
And I think that's the thing why I, um, we decided that this was so important, because I want to reach back to the woman who's there, who's laying in her bed at night. And she's like,
Mm,
what am I going to do? What
right.
am I going to do? you
Right.
know, and um, and then putting on a happy face and
Mm-hmm.
going about your day, because you have your kids and you have to, that's what we do.
Right.
And I hope that this is giving them some hope. I don't know if it
Right.
is.
I think so. And I think just from my perspective, watching your transformation over the years is amazing to watch because you went from a very hard situation and made a hard decision, but you trusted God to get you through it. And wow, like how he how he just showed off in so many ways over those years. And like, I mean, from day one when this decision was made, then you did reach back. You created a women's group, you know, and it was for people, for women going through that, or was it divorced or going through divorce?
Separated or divorced. It was called Well
Yes.
Women. And I look back now and I'm like, I don't, because I wasn't going to that church.
Mm,
And um I look back and it's like this big blur on how this group got started, right?
right.
So the idea was it would bring separated and divorced women together
Mm,
to form a community and to, worship and do Bible
right.
studies. And the interesting thing about, and we were together for a short time. I, live in Fredericksburg. They are in Stafford. And as my business picked up and things, I couldn't, because I have to come home and let my dogs out.
Right.
And then getting there, and it just kind of fell apart. But we were together for a couple of seasons.
Wow.
And but what looking back, God had such a bigger purpose for that group, because
Mhm.
like I said, I had in a previous episode, I had served in middle school ministry for so many years, right?
Right.
And alongside George, speaking of dogs, he hears him. He's scratching his back. Um, um, the men, one man in particular that I had served with, I really felt self-conscious around the men that I had served with, because I was like, what do they think about this? What
Right.
do I have walked out, of this marriage.
Right.
And it was so strange, Missy, out of the blue. One of them walks into I was like waiting for the ladies to get there, and he was like, just like, it was almost like God was speaking out of his mouth,
Wow.
and about how they missed me and how they wish that I was there to be a confirmation mentor. And just how, not that I don't want to say he admired me, but how much he thought of me as a godly woman.
Wow.
And
And that's a
um
huge compliment.
yeah, and when he left, I stopped, like he had no idea. And I think that night, I don't think any women should. And it
Mm,
was just me. I knew that God set it up
right.
for him to come in and speak, like kind of go back into my past and be like, it all mattered and you made a difference, even though
Right.
this happened.
Right. Yeah, because if so much happens to you during that time where you feel like so much like, well, so less than everybody else. And then you're comparing yourself and you're feeling like you owe everybody an explanation or you belittle yourself. And it's like to hear,
Considering
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you just said.
like, here I am, the biggest sinner, like
Right. It is like the scarlet letter. It's like like you have this big sign on your head. You feel that way anyway. Like everybody can see it, everybody knows everything. And that's so sad. Like that's a sad thing. Like you said, you had support, but then it was also the people that judged and acted on those feelings and felt like they had the right to say something to you. And it's like, no, none of us are better than anyone else. We've all sinned. We've all sinned in some way. We've all made mistakes and we all have things that we're ashamed of. We don't need you to call it out. We already know.
it's one thing when you're friends and you're like, look, you're, step, you need to get
Right.
back in line. Like, we are called to do that, but to leave, you know,
Absolutely.
but I will say, when you go through, it doesn't just go away. Like, I am healed from that and I've let it go, but there are times when that creeps up.
Mm,
I'm, I'm dating someone very seriously,
hmm.
and when you think about moving forward, you
Right.
can't help to think about where you've been, right?
Absolutely.
And we were in church, and the pastor he would talked about, like, how God, he forgives us as far as the east is from the west,
Hmm.
right? And so if you go north to south, you hit the poles, so it stops. But if you go east to west,
Right.
there's no stop, right? And he doesn't remember our sins. And if he
Right.
doesn't remember, why do we remember? And I
Right.
just remember, like, that just like hitting me so hard. And then I got home and I had this message on Facebook from one of my former pastors. He's preaching in Roanoke, another area, from his wife. And she said he had given me a shout out in his sermon. about the way I worshiped.
Wow.
And it was just like another God wink of
Hmm.
put this behind you and move forward. Like
Right.
God never doubted how much I loved him
No, not
or
one bit.
whether I was serving with my whole heart or, this horrible thing happens, but it didn't take away from my heart.
Hmm.
And like I was just like the timing of me sitting in church feeling that and then getting that message
Right.
was everything. And she didn't have to tell me. I would have never known. Like I would
Right.
have never known that that happened or
Right. And I think it's important for you to like explain as well. So it's so easy when something happens to you and you can live in that bitterness and you can live in the shame, you can live in the hurt and that, and you can just live there. And, and people do that in different ways, like when they've had a loss or, any type of situation, right? And I feel like you leaned on God. You had support despite some of the people that didn't support you. And what was the one thing like that helped pull you from that bitterness? Like, and I know that it like sometimes it probably creeps up too, but like, that's
better.
you're human. But what is it that you tell yourself? Like, what is it like? Just try to maybe speak to the woman who's right there right now.
Yeah. In order to move forward, what was my role? What do I need to change about myself? What thinking patterns do I need to change?
Mm,
What am I bringing with me that's hindering new relationships?
right.
I will stop myself because, when um, we have these little things in our brains and we're like, oh no,
Hmm.
your nervous system is like, this feels familiar,
Right.
where instead of reacting, I can process what's
Mm,
happening and think about like, is this something from my past? And what do I need to address, taking
right.
responsibility for it? Or is this something I need to have a conversation about,
Mm,
you
right.
know, but not in that moment being, coming at someone for something that they have no idea what's
Mhm. Right. It's like, am I reacting because this is real, or am I coming from past hurt?
and so being able to do that and being able to yeah, just take responsibility for myself. And also like I don't think about, we revisited some things tonight and so of course it was like
Right, right, right,
but I don't if they cross my mind, I wish him well. I want good things for him. That's my heart's desire. You
right,
know, my heart's desire is nothing but good things,
right.
right? I had to set a hard boundary where I'm not in communication. I've opened that up a couple times and it has not served me well.
Mm,
So, but no harm, you know, move
right.
forward and allow myself to move forward.
Mm, yeah. And I mean, and we're talking years. This isn't like, oh, this happened last year, and this is years of
Oh, yeah. Like if
work.
someone had, I mean, there was a time when someone was said, do you mind if I ask what happened? I
Mm,
mean, it was the next hour.
right.
And I was out to dinner with one of my she's kind of a new friend and she wasn't in my life then. And she said, do you mind if I ask what happened? And I was like, I don't really want to bring that energy into dinner tonight.
Oh,
Like, can we
that's
not talk
good.
about that? And then when I was like on my way home, I was like, wow, like
Who is that?
Yeah, and and it felt good. And yeah, it's over and done with. And I mean, and there are scars and there are, yeah,
Right.
uh,
And it is a choice. It's a choice each
it's
day
a
to
choice. Yes,
keep
I want,
moving forward. Yeah.
right. I don't sit there and think about all the things that happen and all I
Mhm.
mean, I almost have to remind myself, like, at
Mhm.
times.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I feel yeah, I mean, if the woman who was laying in her bed thinking how, everything was just so dark, if she could see me now, she'd be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
all right, like
Right. And
let's."
I mean, that's the biggest thing is that remembering that these things, if you make that one step forward and trust God and trust that things are gonna work out. It was like we said in the last episode, it's like you just have to move. You have to move and you have to put that one foot in front of the other and take it day by day and trust that it's going to get better. If you stay stuck and you live in that bitterness, you can't move forward.
Move forward. And let's face it, there are people that we know that are bitter about their divorce for years and years and years and years and
Right,
years. And
right.
I don't have it in me. I don't want to have it in me. I want to move forward. I want to serve God. I want to, and if this mark on me helps set, and it was kind of a fight with the enemy about this. And I was like, I am
Absolutely.
like, you know what? That's it. We're gonna tell this story the best way. I hope this was the best way. And
I think so. I mean, it's an honest conversation about what you experienced
yeah, I
and
mean,
how
and
you move forward.
I can, I have sat in church, especially when we were at that other church, and I would think about the woman in the back
Mm,
who's sitting in the back corner in the dark, all alone.
right,
And I would just be just praying for her,
right.
and I bet you there was somebody praying for me,
Absolutely. Right,
when I was in there and I was in the dark and I was hiding.
right. And I
Mhm.
think it's important to look for those people, right? Look
I
for the
didn't want to be
person,
found.
right?
Work
I mean,
by
look
me.
for the person that's sitting by themselves,
Oh yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, look for those people who feel like they're out of place, feel like, like just look around and you can see it. Like, there are plenty of people that come to church or just in a setting in general, wherever you are. Like,
Right. And
have
even
a
if it's just
conversation.
praying for them, like even if it's
Right.
just like at the church that we go to now, one of the things I love about this church is that you can go pray at the altar. So when they're
Mhm.
doing the closing hymn, you can go pray.
Right.
And to go up there and pray, there's something big going on. You're like, I'm taking it up front. Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
And, and I'm so moved every single week at the
Mhm.
people that go up. And you'll
Right.
watch somebody go up, and then you'll watch somebody go put their hand on that person and
Mhm.
pray. And then I know that I'm praying for them, whatever it is.
Right.
And it's,
It is beautiful to have someone pray over you is an experience that um God is there. God is close and it's so comforting because a lot of the times when you're at the point that you do that and you go up and you ask for prayer, it's a low point. It's a
oh
point
no,
where
exactly.
right. Like you're just like, I can't put the words, the words aren't coming. I don't know what to say. I just need some prayer. And I think it's important to find, that's why I feel like it's important to find your people. It's important to find the ones that love you at your lowest point, that will call you out and say, listen, enough's enough. Like, get your stuff together. But also the ones that love you through those hard times, right?
Yeah.
That will love you through those hard times, but also call you out on your BS. That, and because a lot of times you're like, okay, I'm acting like a brat, or I need to pull it together. But I love that you decided to come from a place of accountability, because I think if more people did that, there would be less hurt in the world. Um, Accountability is, it's not like saying, oh, I did, I take all the blame for everything. It's
Mhm.
taking on and admitting the things that you did. And you said allowing things to happen, right? Allowing it to
Forgiveness, giving cheap forgiveness.
keep forgiveness. And
Mhm.
then you take
Yeah.
accountability for that and your role
Mhm.
and your
Mhm.
behavior. And then you change that and you say,
Mhm.
this is not the way that you should live. And this is not, you know, this is not godly. This is not a godly marriage. And you move forward and you learn from those things. And then going forward into a new relationship, that you change those patterns, right? And you're a better person. You're a better person going into the relationship. And
Yeah.
not that everything's going to be perfect, but you also have the confidence to have hard conversations.
Right. And that and to make the promise to never self-betray. I'm never going to
Right.
betray myself. I'm never going
Right.
to disassociate. Well, disassociate. We talk about like the power
Mm,
of disassociation. We joke
right.
about it. That was another thing I would do that wasn't helpful or healthy
Mm-mm.
and hurt the marriage.
Right.
I could
Right. And in a
disassociate and
perfect world, right? I mean, in a perfect
right,
world, everybody goes to therapy before you get married and you know yourself and all the things. But, marriage is work, and it takes
right,
two people to work at it. And if it's
right,
one person working at it and they're growing and the other person is not, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. And, you know, I brought a lot of baggage to this. Isn't about me. I'm sorry for,
I think this is great.
but I brought a lot of baggage to our marriage. And, once I worked on myself, it was a whole, like we had a whole different marriage. It was a completely different marriage. And so, but we don't know those things, especially when we get married young. And, you know, when I talk to young people,
That's life, though. That's how you grew together and how you made
right,
it through and how you're so connected now.
right.
Like that's
Yeah. And then you talk to younger people and you can say, like, this is my advice, but I came from, this is where I came from. This is where my advice is coming from. It's not like coming from a place of I've never experienced things. I've
right.
been
It
through
hasn't
stuff.
always been roses and
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you think that for a second you're not going to have a day where you can't stand your spouse's face, you're crazy, because you're going to have those days. And that's normal. There
Right.
are things that are not normal and there's things that are not okay. And
Right. Right. And the worst thing to say to somebody going through a divorce is that's the problem with marriages now. No one,
right.
I mean, how many, yeah, that's the easy way out.
Mm, no,
Yeah. No, it's not.
it's
And
not.
yeah. And it's not helpful to say those things. Yeah.
No.
And yeah.
It's not. And I feel like, having conversations like this, no, we don't have all the answers and we don't claim to have all the answers, but
Mhm.
letting people know like you're not alone and you will be okay. Like you just
Well,
have to
yeah.
you have to move forward in
Time and mistakes
mm,
and starting over again and learning things about yourself
mhm. And
as you
that
go.
right there is so important. And I think it is being really honest with yourself
I
about
love all
who
sorts
you
of
are.
self-awareness now. It's so painful. Well, it has been
Awful.
painful. It's been like,
It's
oh,
awful. Like to look at yourself in the mirror and say, wow, like I need to work on this. I need to work on that.
I've
It
been
is
thinking wrong this or not wrong, but
right.
um, well, just for lack of better terms. I've been thinking wrong about this thing all this
Mhm.
time, and then all of a sudden this truth bomb hits, and you're like, oh,
Oops. Right. And you have to realize like you're about yourself is that we all have patterns and behavioral patterns that like from the way we grew up or experiences and we come from certain places of hurt and things like that, recognizing it. And like you said, in your new relationship, it's like, wait a second, that feels familiar. Is that something that we need to talk about? Is that coming from a past hurt? Is that just me? And it's not easy, but you're able to differentiate what's real and what's not.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
Right. And then even vocalizing it, like being like, I felt this way. I know this has nothing to do with you,
right,
but
right.
I felt this in my nervous system and
Mm, right. Just
I think,
being honest and being with somebody that you can have those conversations with.
right, right. Because on things that I feel like I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to have a conversation. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it.
He's a runner.
And he's like, that's it. Like,
Right, right,
and then that happening more and more to where it's easier to have those conversations. Like, this
right,
is safe. This isn't going to turn on me. This
right.
is, you know,
And that line of, and that's where self-awareness and accountability comes in, is that you work on those things and then you just have the conversation, say, I don't need you to fix this. I don't need you to like, whatever, but I'm feeling this way right now and I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. I am working on it and I'm trying to figure it out on my own. I'm just letting you know this is how I feel.
and then, setting boundaries. Like, there are things, and, I'm not going into details because it's like, let's just keep it generic. But I
Yeah.
think we all go through things in relationships, and then we're like, I can't do that again. And it may
Mhm.
not even be a big deal in respecting that about each other. Do you
Right.
know what I mean? I'm not going to, on both sides,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
I understand that that makes you feel a certain way. So I'm not going to use those words
Right.
or,
Right. So again, all that to say, what is it that you would, are there any like, is there anything in like particular that you want to say after saying all that to someone who is like starting their journey right now and they're feeling alone? Like, what are some of the things? I know you said like the podcasts and things like that. Like, what advice would you give somebody?
yeah, definitely I would connect with anything that Lisa Turkis is doing because she's gone through divorce and she's done a lot of biblical studies and she's got theologians and counselors and she's written books about it. And definitely. And I don't know if there's any others. That's who I connected with.
Right.
You will figure out who your people are.
Hmm.
Um, and and just the folks that have hurt you or don't understand. I would encourage you to let them go and wish them well.
Blessed and
I
released.
Yep, yep. I someone I wrote a letter to my former spouse and burned it.
Mm,
That was therapeutic. Um, yeah, and just, and just trust that God is going to give you the people that you need.
right.
And then here's the other piece of it. Some of these things we are meant to walk alone.
Right.
And those nights when I was by myself, again, listening to the same song over and over, wondering how I was going to make it to the next day. God is close to the brokenhearted. And he
Right.
was so close, I could feel Jesus beside me, standing beside my bed. Um, so I don't know. You can, if you're going through this and you want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. Um, I find a church, slip in and slip out if you have to. Don't feel pressured to. I do encourage community and joining groups, but don't feel pressured to that. If you can just get in there and get out, and if that's all you can do, that's all you can do.
Right.
Um, I don't know.
My
I
last
don't know,
question
Missy.
for you.
Oh, okay.
What would you say to Karen that just moved out and is on your own and you're just sitting there and you're just thinking those things of like, what am I doing? How did this happen? What would you
This
say to
happened.
her?
Is this a mistake? I'd say keep going, honey.
Yeah.
Fine. It's going to
Yep.
be fine. It's going to be a journey. You are going to make mistakes. It's all going to be okay. You're going to learn so many things about yourself. It is going to be painful. You're going to have your heart broken.
Mm,
Um, you know, you're, um, but the growth and the life experience from all of it is, I mean, I'm so free now. I come home and it's the dogs and I'm like, you know,
right.
and work is so good, things it, I mean, I know it just sounds so cliche, but really trust God in this and just keep leaning on him.
Right.
Just keep leaning on him and you know what? I will keep your heart pure.
Mm,
Keep your heart pure. Always analyze your motives. What is my motive? Is my motive pure or am I trying to manipulate something? Because in the moments when I would love to say my heart's always pure, but in the moments when I am trying to manipulate a situation or manipulate an outcome, it never goes well,
no.
right?
Mm-mm.
And yeah, keep your heart pure but stand up for yourself. Stand up
Right.
for yourself. And it's going to take time and but you'll get there. You'll get there. You'll be writing books and you'll have your podcast with your cousin.
And she would be like, yeah, whatever. That'll never happen.
Right,
Well,
right, right.
I'm so proud of you for sharing your story. And it's been a beautiful experience watching you, especially the last couple years, not in the years that was the hardest, because that's heartbreaking, but seeing the light come back in your eyes and you coming into the person that God created you to be, and you stepped into that role. And it's like, it's this different confidence that can only come from that I'm seeing.
And the enemy wants to use shame.
Oh,
He
yeah.
wants to use shame. He wants to be like, who do you think you are?
Right.
Right? When I said yes to doing Well Woman,
Hmm.
and that man came in and spoke life to me,
Right.
like that, that was a setup by God,
Right.
right? And when our sermon, I mean, I had heard that so many times, the East from the West, the East from the West.
Hmm.
When that sermon happened that day and that pastor's wife sent me a message, that was a setup from God,
Right.
right? So, shame off of us, shame off of all of us, you
Right.
know, um, and, let's just grow the kingdom, I guess. I don't
Right.
know.
Right. But I'm so grateful that you were brave enough to share this with everybody. I think it's going to speak to a lot of people.
I really hope so. I feel all like I just threw up all over everybody.
Right. And it's scary because this is
Feel
something
nervous.
that's been such a huge part of your life that you've, like, when you put it out into the world, it's like you have no control over it. But again, the purpose in pain, I feel like God has a purpose in pain and our experiences, and it's to help other people.
I
And
agree.
there's somebody right now, even if it's one person out there that is feeling those feelings, that can hear your words and have some hope that, okay, things are going to be okay. It's worth it, right? Like it's,
It's worth it because I do remember in the weeks before we left and the weeks after, just looking for some encouragement, looking, and there wasn't much out there.
right,
I mean, there wasn't like there wasn't a Christian voice,
right, right.
um,
And I think
that I
it's
could find.
important, yeah, for people to know, like, Christianity is full of broken people, and
Mhm.
it's just full of broken people that love God. And when we pretend that we're not broken and that we are perfect, that's when things get messed up. And I think that's when, you know, it doesn't reflect God, and it doesn't reflect, what he wants us to do and how he wants us to fellowship with everybody. Um, and I just think this is important to keep sharing your stories. And I think it's important to, like you said, reach back to the person that is at the first stop sign in their journey, and reach back and say, look, I know what you're going through, and it's okay, and you're going to be okay. Just keep
Yeah.
trusting God and move forward. So
And
thank
forgive
you.
yourself for every mistake you make along the way. Yes.
Absolutely. Just keep moving forward in faith and forgiveness.
Mm,
Yeah.
I
So,
love that. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you, Karen. Do
Thank you,
not do
Missy.
not go run and hide under the blankets.
Right.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And I know that God is like encouraged you 100% to do this. You're sharing the journey that he brought you through, and I think that's important. So
Thank you,
I'm
Missy.
really grateful that you felt the need to do this now. So this is our fourth episode. We are so happy that you're here and grateful that you
Yes.
allow us to share these stories. And we hope that it speaks to your heart in some way. And we can't wait to hear your thoughts and reach out to us, and make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. I've yet to
Yep.
figure out Apple. It just won't cooperate right now, but I'll get it on Apple Podcast eventually. But yeah, I can't wait for you to watch. So
Okay.
thank you. Thanks for sharing,
Bye.
Karen. Bye.
Yes, of course. Bye.